Welcome back to the dark aspects of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword Part 2. In the last episode, I discussed the game's creepier locations, and the parable inspiring my favorite dungeon in the game. I left things off in the many arms of the slasher-smiling Koloktos, and the expressionless yet resolute guardians of the Silent Realm. Today, I'm going to focus on another weapon-wielding warrior, who is also literally a weapon, Ghirahim, the self-proclaimed Demon Lord and servant to the all-powerful Demon King Demise. Ghirahim is an effectively spine-chilling figure that is the complete opposite of expressionless. He's flamboyant and sporadic, tailing Zelda throughout the course of the entire game in an attempt to kidnap and use her to revive his master. It's just not his endgame that's unsettling though. He's flawed in that he takes too much pleasure in his own bloodlust, and can't resist toying with Link, especially at the start of the game. He has an abnormally large tongue that rivals the likes of Gooey from the Kirby franchise, and even Yoshi, using it to lick off what is presumably Link's blood from his own sword whenever he lands a hit. If you remember what I said at the start of the video too, his threats and fixation on Link's punishment is no joke. He promises to graciously beat Link within an inch of his life, rather than outright murder him, and tells the hero later that the affair will be so excruciating, Link will deafen himself with the shrill sound of his own screams, causing his ears to bleed. Ghirahim's utter breakdown and desperation at the end of the game works to reveal the most sinister side of his unhinged personality. His dance as part of Demise's revival ritual is equally disturbing and hilarious. But once Link defeats the onslaught of minions, summoned solely to be sacrificed just to slow him down, Ghirahim reveals his true self, as a spirit of Demise's sword, just as Fi is to Link's, with the outer layer of his steely skin having finally cracked open completely from the gradual spread that came with each encounter. They even sort of resemble lightning scars, which is a very cool detail if it was intentional. And it may very well have been, considering how Demise channels lightning strikes directly through Ghirahim. Yes, Link does the same thing with Fi, but only out of necessity, and perhaps not enough to permanently affect her external appearance. Demise's final design thankfully looks intimidating too, taking the good parts of the imprisoned, namely the individual black and red scales that make up his body, and the X-shaped scar on his forehead caused by Hylia's sealing spike. He appears at last in his unrestricted form after nearly devouring Zelda/Hylia's soul, a dark god unleashed upon the world, in the era of Hylia, as he was already vanquished by the Triforce in the present, brutally extinguished when the Sky Keep fell from the sky and smote him. I also quite like what Ghirahim is willingly transformed into, an apparent anti-Master Sword, engraved with an inverted Triforce. At the center of his evil emanating binding circle is a portal to a peaceful plane, reminiscent of the inside of the menacing moon from Majora's Mask. Instead of a pleasant hillside leading to a Technicolor arena though, the chosen battlefield is an expansive, reflective, shallow lake with a boundless sky overhead, not unlike the illusionary room housing Dark Link in Ocarina of Time. That is, if you're not playing the Nintendo Switch Online version. Then, when Demise suffers enough slashes from the Master Sword, he summons a storm, producing the aforementioned lightning, as the fated foes exchange mortal blows. The way Demise meets his demise by Link's hand is unforgettable too, much like the final blow to Ganondorf in the Wind Waker, though it was more shocking in that game, at least figuratively. In the previous episode, I alluded to the implications of Demise in Zelda lore, but it is here we are given explicit information on what he truly is from Fi, as well as how he impacts the future of the franchise in his own words. Fi explains that he is the source of all monsters, an eternal being who has conquered time itself. Like Hylia, Demise can never really perish, so upon his defeat, he utters an undying curse that affects all of Link's lineage, spiritual or otherwise. All heroes like him, Hylia's chosen, who share the blood of the goddess, will be followed by an incarnation of Demise for all time. This incarnation is of course implied to be the various forms of Ganon and Ganondorf, but as the source of all monsters. This could even extend to the many other Zelda antagonists. That's a lot to take in. So on a lighter note, the last demon I'd like to discuss is one that would very much like to be human instead. Batreaux from beneath the graveyard, whose being a demon is the cause for all the monsters thriving at night on Skyloft, and the friendly creatures turning evil by moonlight, as is the case with these remlets, who are otherwise beloved pets to Skyloft's denizens you can temporarily retame by force. Batreaux is introduced when a village girl is rumored to have been kidnapped by a monster. As a side note, children being kidnapped in Twilight Princess was actually cited by the Zelda Encyclopedia writers as an example of the darker elements not present in the series until that title, even though children are definitely kidnapped by the Helmarock King in the Wind Waker. But anyway, in actuality, the child was invited over by Uncle Bats here, because she was the only one in the village who didn't scream at the sight of him. Once Link helps Batreaux become human by gathering enough gratitude crystals, the demonic energy of what is supposed to be a Sky Island utopia is ultimately vanquished, and the village becomes safe again after hours. For the most part. Appearing exclusively when the sun sets is the disembodied spirit hand of a young girl, based on popular Japanese school-time ghost stories according to Miyamoto. If Link and Zelda's romance in this game just didn't do it for you, or Link and Beatrice, a girl you can either set him up with or lead on and then cruelly proceed to break her heart. Why not pair Colin here with this lovely apparition found haunting the dorm's bathroom toilet? You see, the ghost hand is having a bit of a crisis and asks for paper, much like the triple question mark character from again Majora's Mask, who's in the same situation. So when Colin asks you to deliver his love letter to a girl he likes, one might be tempted to use the newly acquired paper to help a ghost girl hand out in her unfun predicament. The hand, probably before, using it, actually reads the letter and is touched by its words that were in reality meant for another girl. Nevertheless, she falls in love with Colin, and can be seen stroking his hair every night thereafter, which causes him to forever become restless and paranoid. He'll also hate Link for the remainder of the game, because he deliberately did what Colin told him not to do. As I hinted at earlier, the dialogue choices made available to the player can sort of turn Link into a jerk. My favorite example of this in the entire game is the option to tell a Magma that their leader has ascended to the great beyond. Instead of reassuring him that the Elder's alright, which he very much is, we just moved him above the clouds with the help of a transporter robot. Backpedaling a bit though, there's one last point I want to make comparing this game to Majora's Mask, and that is the gear shop owner. He's eerily similar to the infamous Happy Mask salesman, from his split personality to the ridiculously overreaching grin. He even looks and poses just like the guy. Rupin has an overly enthusiastic, smiley presence, which dissipates the moment there isn't a customer in sight. Hey, anyone who's worked in a retail setting should be able to relate to this. Or he's off the clock and at his home for the night, where he'll readily buy treasures off of Link, which works to feel somewhat seedy. With all that out of the way, but still technically on topic with Majora's Mask, so sorry I lied there, we arrive at the very last talking point I'd like to elaborate on today: time travel. In the Lanayru Desert, Link is able to utilize the power of timeshift stones to revert the area in an activated stone's vicinity to a time before Lanayru became a desert, and ancient technology prospered. It can magically bring any living thing from that era back to life, including bokoblins. But if they leave the radius in which the stone's effect reaches, they'll turn back into a pile of bones. Just try not to think too hard about how that works exactly. A much bigger skeleton belongs to the Thunder Dragon, who decayed in the Desert Gorge, likely due to an unspecified yet lethal illness he suffered from. Coming across his remains for the first time is somewhat of a scary sight, as his still lingering spirit seems to be contained within his skull. But he does eventually get to exist in the present with a non-bony body after Link cures him, where he sings the full song of the hero with his celestial comrades. Anyway, that's a wrap for the dark aspects of Skyward Sword. If you enjoyed this video, please share it around. A big thank you to my Patreon patrons, Jennifer, Kathleen, Caleb, Dat Barry, and Katie, and to any one of you that made it through to the end of this video. I hope you look forward to more Dark Aspects episodes coming very soon.